Hey guys, ZomFox here, and today it is time to do another opinion video. I haven't done one of these in a few months, but there's something we need to talk about. Through the first 3 weeks of the UFL season, we've seen a lot of great things, whether it be the games being insanely close, some teams having really solid crowds, and overall good TV ratings, but there's been one issue. There's been this certain rule that has very evidently been a bit too unfair, and that is, of course, the alternative possession 4th and 12 option in the UFL. We have seen two separate teams now that objectively were the worst team throughout the day, that should not have been in the game, but were able to get a 4th and 12 conversion, which essentially let them win the game. It's time to talk about that, and why it's an issue, and why they need to fix it. So, before we get into the overall what they should do and all that, the actual rule itself is simple. This is the exact ruling that was listed from the UFL rule page that was, sent out to everybody. While onside kicks are allowed at any time during the game, teams will have an alternate option to retain possession in the fourth quarter if a team is tied or behind during the fourth quarter. It may elect to retain possession after a score with a 4th and 12 from its own 28-yard line. Now, the two in question that we've seen are, of course, the Brahmas doing it to the Memphis Showboats in week 2, where they were able to, after a touchdown drive, go right back and go for it, and they were able to succeed it, which led them to go get the game-winning touchdown later that drive. And then just this week, in week 3, we saw the DC Defenders do it to the Houston Roughnecks, or not to the Roughnecks, to the Arlington Renegades in the XFL Championship rematch, where they were able to do it after as well a touchdown, and were able to just get a few more yards for a game-winning field goal. So those are the two times we've seen it work. And now the question exactly is, well, why is this a bad rule? Well, the first thing to understand is just the issue itself, and that the fact is that the defense suffers from tiredness much more than the offense does. This is the main reason why this rule is an issue. Think about it like this. You've heard that saying all the time from announcers and all that about how, the defense is getting tired. And for those of you who don't understand why that is, it is a lot harder to play a defensive position than an offensive position. Think about it like this. It's the age-old debate on cornerback versus wide receiver, which is harder. If you know football, cornerback is not somewhat, it is way harder to play than receiver. Receiver is literally just follow your route. The cornerback is you're going to be stuck following his route or staying in your zone and still having to cover the receiver's route. Essentially, the offense is what causes the reaction, but the reaction is based on the defense. And the only position that isn't, and when you think about it, it makes sense. It goes for the same for D-line. D-line have to push forward. Now, they don't know if it's a run block or a pass blocking scheme because they don't know if the play is a run or a pass. And that also changes. Do defensive ends need to pull back to cover the inside, or do the defensive tackles need to go outside and cover the edges? You don't know. You have to react to everything. So it leads to the defense getting much more tired. There's a reason why you don't see teams swapping out offensive linemen like every couple plays, but you do see defensive lines have guys get swapped out every couple plays. It's not just because one guy's better at this or that. It's because these guys just get tired quickly. It's why when a defensive lineman is able to play an entire game without missing a snap, it's a big deal. Whereas if an offensive lineman does it, it's congrats, you just did what you're supposed to. So that is a huge reason for it. And the proof of that is just thinking about, and naturally this leads to the other thing. I've talked about it both times live during the game where the defense ended up kind of choking in the final drive. A huge part of that was because they're tired. This rule only exists in the fourth quarter, so the defense has already played through almost an entire game, and since this rule naturally only usually happens in the last 5 minutes of a game, these defenders have played a full game basically. Now, yes, they've only been on the field for, in theory, about half the time, but they were just on the field for a drive, and in both the circumstances I talked about, they were on the field for an entire touchdown drive, and then we're told with no rest, go right back out there and go defend again. And so it makes the 4th and 12 incredibly easy for the offense to pull off. And so that leads to the question of what exactly they should do about it. Well, when you look at the three rules, we have the USFL rule, the UFL rule, and the XFL rule. The USFL rule was a 4th and 12 from their own 33-yard line. The UFL, like we talked about, is a 4th and 12 from your 28, and then the XFL rule was a 4th and 15 from their 25-yard line. Now, the main counterpoint I've seen to changing the UFL rule is because the XFL rule was quote-unquote too difficult. Yeah, it shouldn't be a cakewalk. I know some people are also saying it's only 2 examples, it'll get better, or, it'll even out. But will it though? Especially because unlike teams like, naturally, the Panthers or the Roughnecks were to fail it. Come on, their 2 offenses haven't done a ton. I know the Panthers offense looked a lot better in week 3, but still. But all these teams are a lot better than they were before. They are a lot better than they were in the USFL in 2022 and much better than either league this past season. So the overall team is much better. Now, when the defense gets tired, the offense is a lot better than it used to be, so it's able to exploit that much more. That's why we're seeing so many high-scoring fourth quarters in the UFL. So it makes it insanely easy, because just think about it. Why else would only the losing team be able to use this rule? If this rule was not in favor of the offense and was not designed to be a highly successful play, either team should use it anytime in the fourth quarter. If your team goes down and scores a touchdown and you're up by 10, you should be allowed to go do it. You should. If you're not allowed to, it is the league literally saying this rule is overpowered, unfair, and is not good for balancing the game. But we're going to keep it to make games close. That's what they're admitting when they say that the team leading can't use it. So this rule needs to be changed, okay? Because it's really aggravating when you're an objective fan and you watch like the Renegades versus Defenders. The Renegades they were unarguably the better football team. They played better the entire game. But because the Defenders got one good drive at the end of the game, they were able to keep their offense on the field and keep the Renegades defense on the field and force them to defend a play that they just physically couldn't. And especially when we saw with the Brahmas one, that Brahmas play, as you saw earlier, very well could have been short. Now, I don't think it was, but the fact that it wasn't reviewed, because again, these usually happen at the end of the game. But with 2 minutes left, you can't review it. It's a booth review, but because the offense is going fast for time, they're not going to review it. So everything about it just heavily favors the offense. So what do you do to change it? Well, I think there's two different solutions. Solution number one is to push it back 10 yards. The fact is that where it is right now, if you successfully do the 4th and 12, you are getting the ball at the 40-yard line. Now, yes, you're getting at your own 40-yard line, so you still have to go a ways away. But especially what we're seeing with field goal kickers, you only need to get about 25-ish yards, and you're in field goal range. So pushing it back 10 more yards is a big deal, because that's 10 more yards an offense has to go down the field to either get a touchdown or especially a field goal. It's what we're seeing as well. We're seeing a lot of long-range field goal kicks because the USFL kickoff method results in a lot of returns to around, guess what? The 40-yard line. So pushing it back 10 yards could be a solution. Yes, you do still have the issue that the actual play is still relatively easy, but number one, the punishment is a lot harsher because now the opposing team will get the ball just literally less than 20 yards away from the end zone, which it should be. This is a high-risk, high-reward play, and if you're only going to let the team losing use it, it should be that play where if you fail it, you lose the game. But the other solution is I actually think you move it closer, but you make it a 4th and 15. People of XFL fans who say that the rule was a bit too unfair for the offense, it was a bit too hard to convert the 4th and 15. Well, when you do this, you make it to where you're gaining a lot of yardage if you do succeed it. Remember, the XFL rule was at the 25-yard line. So doing this, if you successfully get it, instead of getting the ball at the 40-yard line, if you get the minimum 15 yards, you're getting it at the 45-yard line. It is a solution that I think they should do. I think that just straight up adding 3 yards to it right now, moving it back to the XL method, probably isn't the best way to do it. As I've said before, there's a lot of people that thought that that method was a bit too harsh for the offense. But I don't think you should do so much changing one way. I think it should be kind of a mix. Essentially, do the 4th and 15. You're adding a bit more of a high-end reward if you succeed it, but you're making it harder. Whereas the 4th and 12, you keep the same difficulty of the play, but you make the actual drive harder. And that's what we're seeing. These teams are able to have enough time with less than a minute left, thanks to all the clock stoppages, when getting a first down. Making a 10-yard difference is a big deal, and I think that's the one they should do. I think they should just push it back 10 yards. Because now you make the final drive a lot more difficult, especially for the field goal. Seeing the Defenders win a game because they were able to just get literally a couple decent plays and boom, they're in field goal range is crazy. And that is not fair for the game. And that punishes teams that play well. It's like what Stoops said after the game. He basically said his team didn't play any... They played mistake-free football. I mean, it's hard to say they didn't. They were the better team than the Defenders, and they lost. And now they're 0-3. Their season is in high jeopardy now, despite the fact that, like I said, they were unarguably the better team. They lost. It wasn't because they were the worst team. It's because the Defenders were able to use a rule that is fundamentally unfair. And again, it's one of those things I hate to say because I love, having people argue their points, but objectively it is unfair. When you force it to only be used by the team that's losing, you are admitting in the rulebook that this rule is unfair. So change it. Make it a bit more fair. Still keep it that only the team losing can do it, but at least make it somewhat fair. It's just the way it's set up, it's way too in favor of the offense, and you're just making games close that shouldn't be close. You're punishing teams that play well, but that let up a touchdown late when, guess what? The defense is already tired. That's why they're letting up touchdowns late. That's what I think. Let me know down below in the comments what you guys think they should do with this. Do you think it's fine the way it is? I personally really think they need to change it. I don't think they need to get rid of it like some people might be saying. I think they just need to tweak it a little bit. Do you think the tweaks I suggested are better? Which one do you like better and all that? If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified as soon as I upload any videos. We are on the quest for 800 subscribers now. And if you've been a fan of the channel for a while, think about becoming a channel member to support the channel for as little as 99 cents a month. You'll get one video per month that is a non-UFL sports video, as well as many other benefits. So do that if you want to hit the join button in the description, or you can click the link. And as always, have a great night.